Hello and welcome back to our study of Edgar Allan Poe and his writing as mentor text to help improve our own writing. Last time we read the story Cask of Amontillado, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that and maybe got some tips and tricks in there for how to improve your own writing, especially if you want to do like the psychological thriller and those kind of mystery type stories. So what I want to do today, we're actually going to be looking at a couple poems, also by Poe. I know several of you have mentioned that you like to write poetry, so I wanted you to just get a sample just of what he could do as far as poetry goes. Now, there's lots of different types of poetry, obviously, but we're just going to be looking at what he does. His poems, just so you know, they are also stories. Some poems are not necessarily stories per se, they're, emotions or slice of life. His poems tell a story. The other thing is that his poems rhyme. Now, hopefully you realize by now that not all poetry has to rhyme, and that's totally fine. His does, and actually I think he does a really good job with it. It's a tricky thing to write poems that rhyme without it sounding too cliche or kind of cheesy, but I think he does a really good job. So it's a good model if you want to try to write poetry yourself, and if you want to write rhyming poetry particularly. So, but what I want to do before we actually get into the poems, I want to go over a couple literary devices that he uses in these poems that I want you just to kind of be aware of and maybe listen for as we're going through the poems. Again, to help you if you decide you want to write it. The other thing is that these are devices that you can use in poetry, but also in any writing, of course. So, well, most of them. The first device is external rhyme. So that's when you have poetry and the ends of the lines rhyme. Like I said, like his poems end, it ends like The Kingdom by the Sea and Annabelle Lee and Loved by Me. So sea, Lee, and me all rhyme, right? And of course, hopefully you've learned through your English classes that there's different rhyming schemes and different lines that can rhyme. But when you have rhymes at the end of the lines like that, that's called external, meaning on the outside, external rhyme. Okay. There is also a technique that can be used called internal rhyme. An internal rhyme is where within one single line you have two words that rhyme. Okay. This can be used also, I just want to clarify, this can be used in poetry, it can be used in songs as well. Obviously, in my mind, lyrics of songs are just poetry set to music, right? So you'll see this also if in your favorite songs, you might notice external rhyme. Most of the time songs, the lines rhyme. You might also see some internal rhyme. So within a line of a song, you have words that rhyme. And that just helps to kind of give it a little extra punch to it, right? A third technique that is often used is repetition. Repetition is when you actually use the same word on purpose for emphasis, okay? So, as an example here, he says, I was a child and she was a child. He says that word child twice for a reason. Part of it is it creates kind of that rhythm when you're writing poetry. It also can create emphasis. It says, we loved with a love that was more than love. So it really kind of strengthens that point when it's done on purpose. Now, here's the trick. With repetition, you don't want to use it a lot, but when you do, it has to be done purposefully. One of my flaws as a writer, I'll be honest, is that I tend to use repetition a lot accidentally, where I just keep, I get a word stuck in my head and I use it over and over. But if it's not intentional, that's bad, so we got to change that. But once in a while, when you do it on purpose to really create that emphasis, it can be a beautiful thing. So, and he does use repetition in here, so watch for that. The last literary device, which I don't know why, but it's just one of my favorites, is alliteration. Alliteration is when you repeat the consonant sounds. So you have words that start the same way. So start the same is alliteration. Or, think of any tongue twisters. So she sells seashells by the seashore. That's alliteration. You've got all these words that start with this sound, right? Here we've got to shut her up in a sepulcher in the kingdom by the sea. So we've got words, they don't have to be right next to each other, but close. Shut, sepulcher, see. And again, that provides that kind of that rhythm and that emphasis. And that's kind of the purpose. So I just wanted to go over those, just kind of get your mind thinking about them. As I'm reading, maybe kind of watch for those and see how he uses them in his poems. Okay? So the first poem we're going to read is Annabelle Lee, again by Edgar Allan Poe. And I'm just going to read through it first and then maybe talk a little bit about what it means. So, Annabelle Lee. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived, whom you may know by the name of Annabelle Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, and she was a child, in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabelle Lee. With a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago, in the kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabelle Lee. So that her highborn's kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that is the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee. But our love is stronger by far than the love of those who are older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of my beautiful Annabelle Lee, and the stars never rise but I feel the bright eyes of my beautiful Annabelle Lee. And so all the night tide I lay down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. So, in case you didn't catch it, the two of them are in love. She gets a cold or gets sick and dies. And what does he do after she's dead? He is still thinking about her. And every night, all the night tide, all night long, he goes down to the water where she is buried, her sepulchre, her tomb by the sea, and lays down by her. So, very beautiful, very heartbreaking. Probably not the best way to deal with grief, but, it sounds good in a poem. So hopefully you guys picked up some of those literary terms or the literary devices, The moon never beams without bringing me dreams. Example of that internal rhyme, right? The demons down under the sea. Demons down is alliteration. So just, different ways to kind of really make it sound like music, right? This is that fluency we've talked about, making it just sound beautiful, like it rolls off the tongue. So that was the first one. And I think I'm going to do another video for our next poem by him because that one's a little longer. So I will see you back at our next video.